to the PVP Weekly press conference. With me is the General Secretary. He'll be reading two statements after which we'll be taking questions. Cheers.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. The People's Progressive Party is dismayed by attempts by a number of born-again Democrats who seek to create the impression that the PVP has departed from the core values and principles of its founder, Dr. Chedi Jagan. Nothing could be further from the truth. Indeed, the Jagan legacy continues to be and remains the bedrock on which all major decisions on programs and policies are being made, both at the level of the party and government. What is particularly disturbing is the selective and skewed application of the Jagan legacy and a tendency to project a view that members and supporters of the PPP are not entitled to the benefits of a strong and prosperous economy. It was Dr. Jagan who led the assault against the colonial administration to lift sugar workers out of the low-G and slum conditions to which they were condemned by the planter class. The same could be said of the other categories of workers, including those in the bauxite industry, rice farmers, those in the sawmilling industry, waterfront workers, farmers, fishermen, and public servants, all of whom benefited from the militant and relentless struggles waged by the Jagans during the colonial era and later on, following the rupture of the democratic process by the PNC for the restoration of democratic rule and a dignified and worthy life. Every single Guyanese, be they supportive or not of the PVPC administration, stand to benefit from an economy that is growing and delivering more and more prosperity across our country. The benefits from a prosperous economy cannot and must not be for one class or social strata of the population. All must benefit, and they must be free to dispose of their wealth as they deem fit, and provided it is done within the meaning of the laws of Guyana. The rising tide of prosperity has lifted all the boats, and Guyanese today enjoy a much better quality of life, as is evident from the number of persons who are the proud owners of their homes, vehicles, and consumer durables, which was simply not possible under the incompetent and authoritarian PNC regime. There is a common thread that has linked all the administrations since the post-Jagan presidency, and that is the emphasis placed on the social sectors, in particular education, health and housing, and water. The current leaders of the PPP have not departed from this legacy, which is fully consistent with the developmental model laid down by Dr. Jagan, in which he placed the people at the center of all development initiatives, as opposed to what obtained under the PNC administration, where emphasis was on regime survival through the use of force and fraud. Those who say that the PPP has drifted from the values and principles of the late Dr. Jagan are deliberately playing up to a political agenda which is aimed at undermining the very institution which Dr. Jagan created and the lofty ideals to which he stood. Insofar as the current polemics now taking place in our country, we need to ask the following questions. Did Jagdeo attack Dr. Jagan's ideology? The answer is no. Did Jagdeo attack Dr. Jagan's politics? The answer is no. Did Jagdeo attack Dr. Jagan's economic policies? The answer is no. Did Jagdeo attack Dr. Jagan's international policies? The answer is no. What did he criticize? He countered the political opposition and sections of the media for attacking him for using his personally accumulated wealth to build something to his liking. By doing that, does it mean going against what Dr. Jagan stood for? In the 1957-64 government, Dr. Jagan had many well-to-do personalities with him who were PPP members of parliament and ministers of government. The same can be said about the 1992 government. So, the question is, why should it be okay for some in a PPP government to be prosperous and to accumulate and spend their savings the way they want to, while for others it must be different? What if Jagdeo lived in an apartment building and was a collector of rare paintings and had gone to one of the auctions hosted by Sotheby's and used the savings he had accumulated to buy a famous piece of art? Would he have been criticized for that? Would that have been a departure from Dr. Jagan's beliefs? Some keep saying that dissenting voices have been effectively stilled in the PPP. Well, if this is the case, how do you explain the PPP allowing Mr. Jagdeo to speak out on these matters of interest to him and the party? It is apposite to recall that Nagamutu was given every opportunity to express his views internally and externally until he himself decided to walk with the infamous Adon with Alio. Jagdeo expressed his views as he saw it on the matters to which he spoke. Those views, it must be recalled, were not expressed by the General Secretary of the party. So it is grossly unfair, unprofessional, and unbalanced to attribute Mr. Jagdeo's statements to what the party stands for. When a member of the PPP expresses a viewpoint, is perceived by the newly found Jagan lovers to be against what Dr. Jagan stood for. We have to be suspicious of their intentions and pretensions. It is best left to the leadership of the PPP to pronounce authoritatively on such matters. In my own view, all that is taking place on this matter boils down to a matter of polemics, which is good for the country. We need to get these views out in the course of healthy and robust debate. And that is precisely what Jagdeo's views triggered. Jagdeo's pronouncement like a good cartoon or caricature, have stirred controversy. But why the synchronized outrage to his comments? What is so incendiary about what he said? Is there a correlation between the frankness of his statements and the responses it evoked? Why does his comments evoke fear in his adversaries and his inveterate critics? Is it that his pronouncements have the power to enrage, upset, and discombobulate the otherwise rational people and groups and drive them to emotionally charged responses? Stay tuned. In the meanwhile, to those who are so deeply and emotionally affected by Jagdeo when he speaks, they should consult their neurosurgeons, since there may be a socio-psychological connection between Jagdeo's pronouncements, a stimulus, and the emotional responses to them. Thank you. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party is perturbed over the unwillingness of GCOM to allow public vetting of election day staff. The party views this move as sinister and undemocratic against the Guyanese people. The PPP has been the lone advocate in its call for vetting of potential polling day staff. Contrary to what is being perceived, the party supports vetting of these individuals by all major stakeholders and the electorate. History has proven world over that polling day staff has a significant impact on the transparency and integrity of the electoral process. Hence, much emphasis must be placed on recruiting experienced, qualified, and neutral persons to fill these positions through a transparent process. A process that involves the electorate through public vetting will only serve to boost the confidence in the system. We have seen in 2011 the unprofessional and biased acts by a few presiding and assistant presiding officers towards PPP supporters and polling agents and candidates, especially in Georgetown. The PPP is wary of GCOM's defensive statements in response to issues and concerns raised by political parties, especially toward the recruitment and training of polling day staff. More so, the downright refusal to engage in public scrutiny of these persons. And this should be no secret nor kept as a surprise for the nation. Every voter deserves to know the person or persons sitting in the polling stations where they will be casting their vote. Further, the PPP calls on GCOM to embark again on an aggressive voters education program, especially in the rural, hinterland, and riverine communities across our country. The PPP views this as yet another step to having free and fair elections come May 11, 2015. Voters' knowledge of the electoral process will minimize spoilt and rejected ballots and will reduce waiting time for all voters at the same polling place. Should this be done thoroughly, then there will be no need for information clerks at polling places, reducing the confusion and frustration that was experienced in the 2011 election. Thank you.
Thanks. There are the two statements. Now I'll open the floor for some questions. Adam?
Yes, sir. Sir, it's nice to hear your defense of former President Jaguar.
No,
Well,
I have what I'm defending here is the PPP.
No, Jaguar definitely owned them.
I never said that.
But sir, when last we spoke, you said the records are there about wages and salaries. I did the research, and overwhelmingly, a senior minister was earning just about the same as a senior public servant, $28,000 a month in 1992. The same cannot be said for today. And the hike in ministerial salaries came during President Jaguar's administration, sir. Could you explain?
Well, you didn't give me the comparative analysis. What are the numbers?
A senior minister, $28,000 a month. A senior public servant, Dr. Lunchin can tell you he was earning $35,000 a month in 92, and it went up to $60,000 a couple of months later. A junior minister was earning $14,000 a month, and these figures can be had from the parliament. I'm sorry I didn't walk with the entire list. The highest paid was the Attorney General, $78,000 a month. Something you acknowledged when you were here that he had a differential. But all of that has changed. Salaries of ministers of government are way beyond what any senior public servant would have. Senior public servant, $200,000 a month maximum. Ministers, minimum $800,000 a month.
Which minister gets $800,000? I don't get $800,000 a month. And I've been serving in this government since '92.
Gail Bashira.
Listen to me. No, listen to me. You're referring to ministers?
Ministers, yes.
I'm using myself as an example.
All right.
I do not earn $800,000 a month. I do not. I never did.
All right, you never did, sir. But your colleagues have.
Which one?
Gail Bashira.
She's not a minister.
She's not a minister. Roger Lunchin isn't a minister either.
No.
The Attorney General will easily be on the pay at least $1.7 million a month.
And you have to note that that is a practice that started under the PNC.
Yes.
Good.
The Minister of Health, Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, earns in excess of $800,000 a month.
I'm not aware of that.
Huh?
I'm not aware of that.
No, sir, I can get the figures out of Parliament.
No, but I'm saying to
All
you.
right, you're not aware.
No, I'm saying to you, what I'm aware of
All right.
is that I
appreciate that.
as a minister from '92 to now,
Right, sir.
I earn about $300-something thousand a month.
Yeah, the pay.
That's my salary.
All right. But even then, you're still better paid than the average public servant.
No, but listen to me. I've been working my life. In my working life, I've been working since 1967. I started working at 17 years of age. And for over 40-something years, through the passage of 40-something years, I'm earning $300-something thousand a month.
I still insist that there is a differential between.
Well, I'm insisting that you use me as an example.
Yes, sir. All right, let's move on.
But sir,
Yeah.
you're not the only member of Parliament. You're not the only cabinet minister.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so, in your own words, what would you say has been turned out to PP's election campaigns on the country thus far?
Well, public meetings vary, depends on where they're held, and the villages, the communities where they're held, and so on. So one cannot expect, we never expect to see turnouts at public meetings at the beginning of the campaign of the type that you would have seen at Babujan, or the type you will obviously see at what we have called the grand public meetings, and eventually the rallies that will come, starting with Kitty. Incidentally, our first rally will start at Kitty on Sunday, and we expect a huge turnout at that particular one, because that is where we will actually launch our campaign. So the turnout of the villagers and the communities differ from place to place. We cannot use as a measuring rod 40 people at a public meeting to determine the turnout at all the PPP public meetings. There have been public meetings where they've had 300 people. There have been public meetings where you've had 100 people. There have been public meetings where you had maybe 75 people, 50 people, 40 people, and so forth. We who have been in this job for years know that at the beginning stages, the crowds usually take time to build. So for anyone who is new to the game, and I want to repeat this, anyone who's new to the game and want to measure the turnout of a crowd, let's say 40, to low turnout at all public meetings, they are barking up the wrong tree. It's a miscalculation. As the campaign picks up, as the elections fever becomes more contagious, you will see more and more people coming out to meetings.
So, sir, are you satisfied with the attendance thus far?
The what?
The attendance, are you satisfied with it thus far? What you've seen, are you
Having regard to the historical evolution and what happens at public meetings. Yes, but you know, Dr. Jagan always taught us, even if there's one person at the meeting, you better talk to that one person. If two people come out to the meeting, you better talk to those two people. Don't walk away. Don't say that, oh, I was expecting 100 people, and I'm sorry, only one is here and I have to leave. No, sir. If there's one person, you sit down and speak to that one person.
So you raised that point, but over the weekend there was a meeting planned in Conley Ida.
In where?
Conley Ida.
Uh-huh.
CI. No one showed up, and the person sparked up and left.
I don't know. I haven't gotten any report on that. I'll have to see what happened, if that is indeed the case, before I comment on a situation of the type that you mentioned.
All right, Sabra, please.
First of all, Ms. Things. I just a quick follow-up in relation to people and lists. David Granger over the weekend during a meeting at Ozone Park in New York, he had mentioned that the current PLE was dirty because of the expansiveness of the list. He had noted that there were I think he said there were almost 100,000 people added to the current list. I think it was 75,000 last time, so that was that, right? What is the PPP stance on that? Are you concerned at all at how large the PLE has gotten, considering Guyana's population and our current demographic breakups?
Our concerns can never be linked to Granger's concerns. Because when we were raising our concerns, the AFC or the APNU never linked their concerns to ours. In fact, they never said anything. So, it's interesting, I would say, to see the Johnny-come-lately raising questions about the electoral process and about the list at this point in time. And all the time they were saying they were happy with what part of the happy people with the process with the election commission was gearing itself for the elections. So that is a matter for them to take over GCOM. But we have never ridden on APNU's or AFC's back. We're riding with our own steam. The issues that we're concerned about are the issues that we raised just now.
Follow-up. Leading up to the general election, is the party then concerned that the current PLE has 75,000 new persons added to it?
Madam, you are raising this matter because Granger raised it in New York. It's interesting to see he realized that that's the case in New York. I'm sure he must have known it before he left here, or there's some expert sitting in New York that told him that. We are not advised about any problem with lists at this point in time. If at any time we are advised that there are problems with lists and numbers, we will certainly take it up. In fact, the record would show that we're the only political party that has been raising issues in relation to GCOM. It's not something we're proud of, but I think that's a fact.
All right, Kurt.
Kurt Campbell, News Service. Minister, taking you back to the statement on Jagan's legacy,
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify whether the party was distancing itself from the comments made by the former president, and I'm premising it on when you said those comments were not made by the General Secretary.
No, why would I'm not distancing myself. I'm not distancing myself from what he said at all. If you listen carefully to what I said, my statement was aimed at stating the fact that he never condemned anything in relation to Dr. Jagan's legacy. And that's the key.
Alright.
Yes, you mentioned in your second statement that dissenting voices are not being stilled, and Dr. Jagdeo is one of the more vocal. I think it was Mr. Ramkran that made that comment in his column. What he was referring to, I don't think he was referring to Dr. Jagdeo in particular, but saying that Dr. Jagdeo has control of the retreat, and other dissenting voices are being stilled.
I think Mr. Ramkaran has lost touch with, and that is rather surprising if that is indeed the case, with the customs and practices within the PPP. Now, right now, the party has, in keeping with annual activities, its regional conferences taking place across the country. This weekend we had our regional conference for Region 4, which is one of the largest regions, where every single party group submits and sends delegates and observers to these regional conferences, which is in keeping with the Constitution. The groups send their representatives to the regional conferences. Preceding the regional conferences were the district conferences. The district conference is a smaller configuration to the region, and at the district and at the region, the members would meet and discuss every single thing that they would want to raise based on two documents. One, read by the secretary of the district and or the region, and two, presentation made by the guest speaker. So the persons who go to those meetings, especially the regional ones which are currently taking place, they are all party members, and they engage in some very fiery, they engage in some very heated, sometimes a very sobered debates and discussions about the future of the party, election issues, all kind of issues, local issues, government issues, and whoever is there that had the authority to answer them, they have to answer those questions as well. So that is a reflection of the internal democracy. And so when we talk about dissenting voices have been still and people don't have the opportunity to express their opinions, it's not true. Because in the groups, the members have the possibility to express their opinions. There's something that's called criticism and self-criticism, where they have the right to speak up on issues. At the district level, the same takes place. At the regional level, the same takes place. And the other activities that are held subsequent to those in which members are allowed to discuss things. We have special structures that have been set up to gear the party for the Congress. We have clusters that have been created in which the party groups and the party structure are subsumed in the cluster, which are a wider body that includes not only party members but even civic members. And they meet and they discuss all the issues pertaining to elections in a very open and democratic way. And that's how we're able to arrive at decisions and to take recommendations to a higher level so that the party could move forward. So at the executive level, discussions also take place there, at the central committee level, at the secretariat level. So I'm amazed to see Mr. Ramkran has forgotten that in the structure of the party, there's always space for lively and robust debates to take place. Now, don't ask me what are some of the issues that are debated there, because I'm not going to, tell tales out of school. But this party has been able to survive precisely because it encourages the membership from top to bottom to debate issues, to take corrective measures. For example, after the last elections, we held consultations throughout the length and breadth of our country to hear from the members what they feel, or what were their views, what were their assessments in respect to us coming in losing our majority in the parliament. We eventually brought everybody together at the Princess Hotel, where we had a large gathering of the representation of the party, where we drew certain conclusions based on the deliberations that took place there. So it's almost impossible for this PPP to have survived over these years without allowing that kind of robust, intense debate to be taking place within this party, because if that were not to happen, I can assure you that the leadership would eventually end up fossilized and become members of Jurassic Park.
All right, you get two persons, you got Kaichi over there, then I don't.
Abhinav Ahmed, Kaichi, good morning. Mr. Marini, Mr. Ramkhan said also in his column that he was abused for many years in the PPP because of the stance he took against.
He was what?
Abused
Hmm.
for many years in the PPP because of the stance he took against.
Because of what?
The stance, S-T-A-N-C-E,
Hmm.
spell it correctly, he took against Dr. Jagdeo, and it became necessary to get him out of the party because of that stance. Could you say if he's lying and if he was never abused as far as your knowledge? And also, could you say if there's anyone else in the entire PPP that has the authority of Dr. Jagdeo, has equal authority or say over the party?
I personally do not recall any of the situations or experiences that he's referring to. I've been in this party since I was 17 years of age, and I have been in the leadership for quite a considerable number of years as well. So I think I can define properly, and I think I can put in perspective, by definition, what is meant by abuse. I don't recall seeing anything of that nature in respect of Mr. Ramkaran. If you were to ask me if there were strong and combative views between himself and other members within the leadership, I would be the last to deny that that was so. And that happens almost to, that's a matter of course within the leadership of the party. But you know, we have a tradition in our party which is called democratic centralism, where after the matter is discussed at length, a decision is arrived at, and those who a majoritarian view is usually agreed to, and those who are in the minority have to subject themselves to the decision of the majority. So the majority views is what goes. Sometimes there are people who cannot subject themselves to the majority view. They believe that their view is the right view, and they have convinced themselves somehow or the other that their view is the right view. We all suffer from this from time to time. We come up with innovative ideas, we come up with suggestions, and the majority of the members in the party are not prepared at that time to go along with it. You know, every suggestion has its time. You can't force certain things on the leadership. And so, in terms of abuse, I do not have any recollection, if I'm to properly define what abuse means. Strong exchange of words, yes. If you're to determine that as abusive, maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on who is the determiner of the subject.
Yes,
Sir, you didn't,
What do we got,
but you didn't answer the other part of the question.
What was the other part of the question?
Is there anyone else in the party with the amount of authority that Dr. Jagdeo has?
The PPP has a central committee that is elected by our Congress. The central committee elects a executive committee, and the executive committee elects a secretariat. All of these bodies are functioning. The central committee meets every 3 months to determine policy issues. The executive meets every week to determine political issues. And now elections issues are uppermost on its agenda. And the Secretariat determines administrative and other issues. These are the bodies that determine various ramparts of policies within the People's Progressive Party.
So, if we were to use your salary as the base for every minister, and you've been a minister since 1992, before former President Jagdeo, how would you attempt to assess President Jagdeo's accumulation of his wealth and the wealth of some of the other ministers?
I don't want to be, you know, when I, in the history of the party, Dr. Jagan always sought to have in the party qualified people, people with university degrees to do research, people with, you know, other qualifications to be advisors to him. This is when he was in the opposition, to be advisors to him on agricultural and many issues and so forth. And he would seek out these people either in Guyana or whenever he travels abroad. And from time to time, at the level of our party secretariat, he would suggest names of persons to be employed with very high qualifications. And when you compare the qualifications which those persons had, for example, with qualifications which I did not have, even though I served on the Secretariat during his time, one could not really argue scientifically or logically that the employment of such persons would not bring tremendous benefits to the party, and therefore you had to pay those people quite a higher salary than we were being paid, who did not have the qualifications, even though we had the length of service and political experience in the party. And this is a normal course in life where one has to recognize that if you bring in qualified people on board with university degrees and so on, and if there are others who don't have those qualifications and cannot be paid the same kind of salary as the university graduates would have, then you'll have to accept that as a reality in life and to move on.
All right, one final question, you, right?
Yes, Mr. Rohit, over the past couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of emails coming from emails quoting that of the PPC. Persons are complaining saying it's a breach of your privacy. How do you respond to those complaints?
I can't respond to something that I don't know about or I've never seen.
So
I haven't been following those things. They're not being specific.
the emails being sent to persons, private emails, those not from the party itself. It says vote PVP, dear friend, what's not.
But who will come from the PVP?
Yes,
Address?
it says yes.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know. I can't comment on that.
All
I know
right.
nothing on that.
Can I have one final question?
All right.
Mr. Roy, in your capacity as General Secretary, could you comment on whether or not there was a fire at the point of that?
In my capacity as General Secretary,
As
Home
Home
Affairs.
Affairs Minister, sorry. My bad.
this morning at the Ministry of Home Affairs, when I was there, the permanent secretary informed me that Mr. Nigel Hughes broke a story on social media about a fire at the forensic laboratory. Yesterday I received a call from the Starbuck News at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, asking me to comment on a disclosure by Mr. Nigel Hughes in respect of a fire at the forensic laboratory. I told the Starbuck News reporter that I'm not in a position. First of all, I was deeply engrossed in a very important meeting at that time, and I I didn't want myself to be distracted by dealing with such matters. I told the reporter from the Starbuck News that the best thing for her would be to call the chief fire officer, who would be in a position to better comment on the matter. I never heard back anything since, but this morning at the Ministry of Home Affairs Department, the secretary informed me that there was this disclosure by Mr. Nigel Hughes about a fire at the forensic laboratory. And incidentally, the reporter told me, give me a lot of details about fuse blown, where the fuse was, points blown, where the points were, circuit issued, and so on and so on. I found it strange that Mr. Nigel Hughes would have all that kind of technical information. But be that as it may, having informed me of this disclosure by Mr. Nigel Hughes and the appearance of it on social media and in other sections of the media, which I haven't seen as yet, I asked the PS to formulate a press statement to respond to this disclosure. So let us wait on the Ministry of Home Affairs to comment officially on this matter, sometime in the course of today.
So, sir, was there a fire?
Thank
Let us
you.
wait for the Ministry of Home Affairs.
Sir, we have one more question, sir. Can you give me a